Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now that we know the basics of what a program looks like, we're going to start to learn about our very first programming instructions. Remember, our programming instructions are like Lego blocks, things that we can reuse as many times as we want in order to solve a problem. Now, what we're going to focus on first is pretty much the first thing you learn in any new programming language is how to communicate with the user, how to give them feedback. So it might be the answer to a problem, it might be asking them a question, or it might just be displaying information. So how do we communicate with the user? This is something called output. Output means when anytime any information whatsoever comes from our program out to the user. Now, this can come in a variety of different formats. That might be images, it might be sounds, it might be vibrations even, but the one we're going to focus on is text. That is probably the most informative that we have control over, so that's where we're going to start. Later on in the semester, we're going to branch out once we get into gaming, and we're going to do all the other things as well. But we got to walk before we run. So how do we actually do that? Well, Java has two commands in order to display information to the user. The first one is called a println command, which is short for print line. The second one is, that should be common. The second one is print, which is very similar to print line, but a little bit more simplified. So what does an actual line of code look like to do this? This is what we're looking at. System.out.println, and then inside a set of round brackets, we're going to just supply it with the text that we want it to display. Now, in order to tell the compiler that it is indeed text, we surround it in a set of quotation marks. So this might be something like hello world. And now we've told the compiler to display the message hello world. If I run my program, I hit start, it's going to ask me to save, and we'll see it down here in the console window, hello world. Perfect. So what is this actually doing? Well, before we get into this a little too deep, we need to understand what's going on here. So this is text. Anything inside a set of quotation marks will be treated as text, even if you have something like this. That is, we may think that that is a number, but really it's not. To the compiler, it's just treated as two separate characters, 5, 5. It has no numeric value whatsoever. This is pretty important because we have to realize that we can't do any math on it. It doesn't understand that concept. So let's put our code back to the way we were. I also mentioned that we can reuse these commands as much as we want. So I'm going to select this, and we're going to put another one, and we'll write that 55 on here, or 55 as it were. Now, since they're two separate commands, I can run this, and we should see them both appear down here, hello world and 55. Interesting. Now, how does this actually work? Well, let's break down that line of code. So this system.out.println, print line, and then the set of brackets, the quotes, and then we finish off with a semicolon. What do all these pieces mean? So system is kind of like the base section of code that exists in Java. System is like the core system of Java. It's a keyword that tells us where to start looking for different functionality. Out says, well, this is one section of the system code set. That's great, but I want more. So the final piece of this puzzle is this, println or print line. This is the command owned by the out set, and it is going to be used to display information on the screen. So the command, I call it a command, but really what it is something called a method. A method is a code block, a group of code that was either programmed by us or it already exists within Java, and its sole job is to perform a single task. In this case, print line displays text on the screen. That is its one and only task. It does nothing else, and that's the way all methods work. A block of code to perform a single task. Now we can reuse these blocks of code as many times as we want. And later on in the course, we're going to learn how to create our own. But for now, the only one we know is print line. Okay, so that's our first method. Great. Following that, you see this set of round brackets. Whenever you see a set of round brackets, you know that they're typically immediately following a method. After any method, there has to be a set of round brackets. Now, sometimes there's stuff in those round brackets. Other times it's completely empty, and we can just leave it empty, but they do need to be there whenever we use a method. The purpose of these round brackets is to contain information. What information, you say? The information the method needs to do its job. So for example, println can't work unless it knows what we want it to print. It just doesn't understand. So we have to give it information. So println requires a piece of text. Some methods we use will actually require more than one piece of information. If that's the case, we'll just list them off and separate them by commas, right? So we might have one that requires a piece of text, maybe another one, and then it also requires a number, for example. So we could just list these off. Now, each one of these pieces of information, one of these things that is required for the method to do its job, goes by a special name. That name is called a parameter, right? It's a parameter. Let me just, oops, parameter. All right. Now, that is the information required by a method to do its job. Great. And then you'll notice at the very end of this statement is a semicolon. This has to go after every command, every method that we use inside of our programs. All right. Not everything we do in our program is going to require a semicolon because not everything is a command, but the vast majority of the things we do will require one. Okay. So we have to remember to put that on there, and it kind of acts like a period at the end of the sentence. It tells the compiler that we're done with this command. So big deal. What next? What can we do with this? Well, how does text output actually work? Basically, if we look down here, this is our console window, and you see that flashing line at the bottom. We see these in any text editor, right? This represents where the next piece of text to be written to the screen will be displayed. This thing is called a cursor. Now, if I haven't displayed any text on the screen, it will be at the very top of this console window. And then as we display our messages, it gets moved around so it can get and display the next piece of information. So what does println do? Println prints a full line of text. What does that mean? It means it's going to display all of the text that's inside the quotes, and then it's going to say, I'm done with this line. And it's going to push the cursor down one line and back to the left of the screen. Or back to the left of the console, I should say. Because that's where the next piece of information, in this case, the 55 or 55, is going to get displayed. So it's that cursor. So we call the println method, and we give it the information. It's going to display it and move that cursor down to the next part of the screen. Okay, well, let's expand upon this. We said that there are two output methods. There's another one called print. So let's say we try this, system.out.print. Actually, you know what we'll do? Just to demonstrate this, I'm going to change hello world to print. So instead of using println, hello world is going to use print. And I'll put another print line down here, system.out. Oh, my screen just went black. Let's see, let me just pause the recording for a second. There we go. Knocked my HDMI cable out. System.out.println, and then inside of here, I'm going to say, I don't know, goodbye, I guess, since we finished the hello. Now, if I run this, watch what happens. We get hello world, and then on the same line, we get the 55. Then we get goodbye on the next line. So pause the video for a second and try and figure out why you think this is occurring. The difference between print and println is that print doesn't print a full line. It just prints what it needs to. That's its job. It will stop and not move the cursor around when it's done. So when we called this system.out.print hello world, it left the cursor right after the exclamation mark. So then when we displayed the 55, it says, okay, I'm going to continue from there. And it did. It wrote the 55, the 55, but then since this is a print line, it's going to push that cursor back down to the bottom of back down one row and back to the left. And then we get the goodbye message. So print is a slight variation on println where it just leaves the cursor where it is. Not a big difference here. So here's one more example. Let's change this up a little bit. So let's say we'll keep hello world there. We'll change that back to a println. And then let's put a print here. Let's change this to computer science. And then finally, we're going to put rules at the end because computer science does rule. Apparently not the English language though. All right, and we're going to run it. If I can find the button, there it is. And we can see that the same idea is occurring. Since I moved the print to the computer science line, it left the cursor after computer science and then put the rules in there. Okay, let's keep going here. We still have a little bit more. So I'm going to walk you through a few other things that we can do inside of our programs. Now there's a ton. So if you go through the PowerPoint in our Google Classroom, there's going to be a lot more information that you can work with there. I don't have time to show you everything at this point, but we are going to show you what we can. So first up, sometimes you want to clear the screen. And there is a command to do this. I'm just going to copy and paste it because quite honestly, I can never remember the full text of it. You can always paste it in yours. So this is the command to do this. Now when I do this, it's system.out.print, and look what I did. This mess here. Now watch what happens. If I run the code as is, we'll see if it actually runs. Nothing changes. Big deal. Let's move it though. Let's put it after hello world. Let's put it right there. Now when we run it, we get everything. That's not supposed to work. That's supposed to clear the screen. Now, maybe that is not working here because of the way the console is displaying. That could be it. Let me just pause for 1 second. Okay, so it looks like it's a flaw with the code set or the font set that exists inside of Eclipse. It should work fine in Replit, but for some reason it's not working here. I'll dig into that later on. We'll try and find a solution. But basically the purpose of this line of code is supposed to be to clear the screen, clear the console. But for some reason it's not working at the moment. We'll come back to that later on once we figure out what the deal is. No stress. Okay, so what else can we do with our output? Well, we can do things like combine text. I'm just going to comment this line out. We can do things like combine text. So for example, I can do this. I can say hello plus world. Now you're like, why would you do that? Well, you wouldn't normally do that because why wouldn't you just make that one piece of text? But in this case, we're just trying to demonstrate the idea that we can do this. So this plus sign works exactly the way you think. It's like addition. It's going to take one piece of text and add it to another piece of text. The term we use for this is concatenate. Concatenate. We're going to concatenate two pieces of text. So in this case, we're going to hello world all together. When I run it, we'll see the hello world. Oh, we lost our space. That is because there's no space inside these quotes. If I want that space, I either have to include it with the hello, include it with the world, or put another piece of text in between, which seems kind of silly, but we could technically do that. We run it, and now we get our space back. But I'm not going to actually do that. We'll put the space right before world there. Get rid of that. There we go. So we can combine text, but it doesn't have to be just text. We can actually combine numbers as well. So let's kind of start over a little bit. Let's say we have a message that looks like this. Put my bracket and my semicolon back. I can say I am space plus 44 plus space or plus quote years old. Now look what it's doing here. We're taking a piece of text, we are concatenating it with an actual number, and then we're concatenating that with the words years old. And since these operations, these plus signs are equal, they're equivalent operations, it's going to work from left to right. Now we can see that our programs have been flowing from top to bottom, but they also flow left to right when it comes to mathematical operations. So in this case, when I run it, we get I am 44 years old. So this basically combined all of this stuff together before the print line command actually did its job. It had to calculate what the end result of this whole expression was before it could move on. Great. So we have to be very clear on how we're going to be grouping things together, including our spacing and everything like that. But we can see that we can actually combine numeric values and text. In fact, you can actually combine anything you want inside of here. Let's make it a little bit more complicated. Let's try something like this. Let's say, let's write hi. And then we're going to take that hi and we're going to add on to it, let's say this. Hi plus 5. What do you think we're going to get? Well, it's going to concatenate this text plus the 5. So if I run it, let's just get that, hit OK. We get hi 5. Awesome. Now let's change this up. I want to do the math. I want to do hi plus 5 plus 2. Well, I'm going to surround those in brackets so I can follow my proper bedmas, which is our order of operations. So order of operations says do brackets first. So I'm going to get 5 plus 2, which is 7. Then it's going to say combine hi with 7. So we should get hi 7. Great. What if I make a mistake and forget my brackets, though? What am I going to get this time? Am I going to get hi 7 still? Sure, why not? Maybe. Oh, I got hi 52. What? Well, the reason why we get hi 52 is because it actually does this in multiple steps. The first thing it does, is it works from left to right because these are equal operations and there's no brackets or anything like that. So that means it's going to say, well, this is the equivalent of saying hi plus 5, in which we get hi 5, all one thing. And now we're going to add on the 2 to that, which now gives us hi 5 2. So it works from left to right. What if I modify this a little bit, though? What if I went like this? System.out.println, let's say 5 plus 2, I didn't put the brackets, plus hi. What am I going to get this time? I'll put the space on this side. Am I going to get 7 hi or am I going to get 52 hi? Let's try it. This time I got 7 hi. Why? I don't know, maybe. Well, because order of operations. There's no brackets. These operations are equivalent, so it's going to work from left to right. So we get 5 plus 2, which is 7. Then it will concatenate that with the hi, which is why we get the 7 hi. Okay, so now we can see that we can actually do mathematical expressions inside of here. All right, let's keep adding on to this. Let's display our hello world message again. Okay, there we go. So we have hello world on here. What do we want to do? Well, there is some special characters that we can apply inside of our text called escape characters. Escape characters. Sometimes they're called escape sequences. I'll put them both here. Escape sequences. Basically what it does is it allows us to add extra formatting to our text right in the middle of the text itself. So it's actually part of the quote. So we have to do it inside of the quotations. So there's a bunch of them that you have access to, but I'm only gonna cover a couple of them. So in order to use an escape sequence, I'm going to indent this a little bit. In order to use an escape sequence, what we have to do is use a backslash followed by a special character which represents the action that we want to do. So if I have \n, that's the equivalent of a new line. This forces the cursor down to the next line, right there on the spot. There's also another one that everybody may want to use, /t, which is for a tab. And there's a bunch in here. Maybe I actually want to have a quotation mark inside of my text, which makes it really hard when I have to use quotations to tell the compiler where the text is. So in this, we could put \quote, and this will actually put a quote in the output. So let's say I want hello world to actually be surrounded in quotes. So inside of my text, I'm going to put a \quote on both sides of hello world. Now let's just put hello in text, or in quotes. So now we've got this piece here and this piece here. So if we run it, we get hello in quotes followed by world. So that's our first escape sequence. Now we could also do, let's say we want to drop hello world down to the next line. So I'm going to say \n right there. So now we get hello and then world. We have to be careful though. What if I forgot to put that space or take away that space? Well, that space is still part of the text. So if I run it now, put the space back, my words aren't aligned anymore because that space is there. Spacing matters. Everything you put inside those quotes will be displayed whether you want it to or not. So you have to be very, very clear. So there are a ton more of these escape sequences. Maybe I want to do something like this, \n and then 2 tabs. And now what you're going to see is hello and then 2 tabs and then world. Great. So now those are our escape sequences. The last piece to the puzzle, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have the ability to add color to our output. You can see everything right here is just the default coloring scheme. Now this actually looks way better in Replit, to be perfectly honest. It displays it a lot better inside of the console, but we will still be able to use it. If you go to our PowerPoint, on the very last slide, there's a whole bunch of code that I've asked you to kind of copy and paste. What these are predefined kind of keywords. We're creating brand new keywords for the dictionary, the Java dictionary, that will allow us to use color. So up here, I've copied it, and I'm going to paste them right here. We want to put them up here below the class, but outside of the main. So I'm going to put them right there. So you can see I've created one for all sorts of colors. Black, red, green, yellow, blue, purple, cyan, white, and then one extra one at the bottom for resetting colors. And up here we have the same idea, but for backgrounds. So a background color will change the color behind the text. The other colors will change the color of the text itself. And in order to use these things, we simply just concatenate it with the text we're trying to display. So for example, down here, system.out.println, I could say something like hello. And now maybe I want the word world to be in a different color. I'm going to concatenate, let's say blue. I have to spell it right. Plus, let me see blue right there. Plus, and I'm going to say world. Now, if I do something else right after this, system.out.println, yo, we'll just say yo. The thing is, when I run this, yo is also blue because this acts as kind of like a switch. We've basically changed all text color from this point on to be blue, which may not be what we actually want. So that's why this reset colors option exists. It allows you to reset the color. So for example, I could concatenate reset colors right here. And then yo should come out as the standard color, which it does. I could have also put it at the beginning of my yo right here. And that would yield the exact same results. And we get our color there. Maybe I want yo to have a background color though. So I'm going to add a background color here, right? Now let's say we want the background color to be, since the text is black, let's make the background color red. Red BG plus yo. Let's see if this works on the Eclipse console. I'm not sure if it will, to be perfectly honest. And it does. Yay! So we can add background colors as well. And that is pretty much it. You can keep combining, and you can see that we can actually have more than one thing just by more and more concatenation. So you could have some things in one line, one color, and change it over. You just have to make sure that you're working with this reset colors at the proper times. And remember that our code always flows from top to bottom, one line at a time. It will not go down to the next line until the previous line is completely done. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is user output. We'll move on to something fun and exciting next time. Good luck and have fun.